Well, today I'm really pleased to be talking to Ben Thomas. Hi Ben.
Hi Vic.
I was just trying to think, driving over here, how long I've known you.
Oh God.
I think it must have been about 8 when we first got.
Yeah. So.
What's that? Without, perhaps you shouldn't give your age away.
23 years.
23 years.
Yeah.
So we go back quite a long way, but I haven't seen you for a little while, have I?
That's
You've
true,
been
yeah.
busy, and it'll all come out in the conversation about what you've been up to. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your career, so that people that are listening can get a little bit of a picture, and then we'll go back to the beginning. So just as a rough, quick guide, elevator speech, if you like.
Yeah. So once I left college at 18, I moved up to London. I started the first sort of professional thing I did was something I started at college, which with Freddy, a violinist, which was called Freddy, and it was sort of gypsy jazz, Celtic stuff. And we sort of carried that on for a year or so after school, after 18, and then kind of it fizzled out a bit at that age. Freddie went to university and stuff, and I started working in a studio. And then one of my friends I'd met at school was Adele, and she'd got signed at the back of being at college. So only sort of 6 months after I'd moved up to London, I got a call to play on her first album, 19. So just on a couple of sort of album tracks. So went and did that, and it was my first sort of big experience in like a big London studio, Conch Studios, owned by Ray Davies, and and it was just this amazing experience. Sort of 19 years old, and then from then on, as a result of that album being recorded, Adele was going to do her first little headline tour, which was just small venues up and down the UK, like Barfly type venues, sort of 100 capacity. So she got me involved, where it was just me and her, me playing guitar, her playing a bit of guitar and mainly just singing. So we rehearsed in her kitchen, slept on her sofa, and then jumped in a Ford, just a normal car, just drove up and down the country with the tour manager and us, and just went and did sort of 10, 15 shows, something like that. And that was my introduction to touring,
Brilliant.
And that was the first sort of tour we did. And then, from then on, it just went onwards and upwards, and
we'll
been
come
there
back to
ever
that.
since.
Could I just, because that was brilliant. That really gives people an idea of, because when I first met you, I started teaching you guitar. And I can't take credit for all of what you've done from me, but the one thing that really fascinated me right from early on is you seem to be in the right place at the right time. And I've mentioned to you before with these interviews with different people, there is an element of that with everyone, but you really sort of have a lot of that in your life. And the first time, I think you were in a choir at school, and your choir won the choir of the year or something somewhere. Was it the UK?
Yeah, some schools thing, district thing.
Yeah, and it was that was the first thing that I realised. I thought, crikey, that was amazing, But then there were other things that sort of went on where I think you did a Battle of the Bands thing early on, and I think you were probably about 11 or 12 or something.
I think it was my only sort of band as a teenager, but we were sort of 13, 14.
Oh yeah. I think you were actually younger than that, because you were beating bands who were like 18, and you know what I mean, and they were like really good bands, and it was I thought, well, there's something here that you just got the sort of knack of being in the right place and making the right decisions. So we'll talk about more of these because I've got a few of them in my questions in my head as we go along. So the first thing really, what got you interested in music?
I mean, I can't 100% pinpoint it, if I'm honest. I think from what I recollect, there was a couple of like sort of toyish instruments when I was a toddler, you know, like a ukulele and a little guitar with buttons on it and stuff like that. And apparently I was just inseparable with these toys. You know, I always had them in my hand when I was 2, 3 and nothing else, and I always used to just sit there and strum away, and I always liked music, you know, the sound of music, the way it made me feel, because I think I was quite a high energy child. I was quite a difficult child, you know, and I feel like I was just drawn to music because it was like a channel for me that I could it was like I could communicate better through that in a way, you know, or I didn't know that yet, but that's what it became. So I think I actually found out an amazing story relatively recently, about 5 years ago or so, on Facebook. Some people we'd grown up with got back in touch. Basically, the house behind ours used to have 2 kids the same age as me and my sister. There's a young girl the same age as me and a boy the same age as Sarah. And they moved by the time I was 4, and we never saw them again. But you know, we'd keep in contact with like Christmas cards, and that was it. So as we were in our 20s, all the kids, we all got in touch with each other and sort of caught up, and you know, how's it going? And Danielle said to me, one of the first things she said to me when we were getting to, you know, getting to know each other, was, "Do you remember the last thing you said to me?" And I was like, "Of course, no, obviously not." I was like 3 or 4 years old. And she says, "Oh, I remember it so adamantly." She was like, "You were holding a little guitar, and you said to me, 'When I'm older, I'm going to be a famous guitarist.'" And I hadn't even started playing guitar at this point. This is 4 years before, you know. And it was like, so I feel like obviously there was an element of me that had already made my mind up by then, you know. So then I think it was just at school, I was just really drawn to it, I suppose. And then obviously my father is a fireplace builder, and he has a fireplace shop, and you'd come in when I was just before I turned 8 to get a new stove or something, and I think Dad found out what you did, and you guys cut a deal or something for the job.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, something like that, you know.
We tend to do.
Yeah, and that was the start of my guitar lessons with you. Was that, and I never looked back after that, for sure.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So at school then, tell me a little bit about what happened, because I might have got this wrong, but I know that because you were in a good school, but obviously you were feeling the draw of music, which was a little bit problematic, I think, wasn't it?
Yes and no. I think it could, from the outside it could look that way, but I think, for instance, if I hadn't have found music, I don't think I would have necessarily been a better student at school. I think music was a way of me having something that, despite the way I was, and energetically and just mentally, you know, I was basically just ADHD, and you know, I was kind of always in trouble, but not for anything of malice or anything. I wasn't a nasty kid or anything like that. I just had too much energy, and I was just chatty, and just, you know, that I was a bit of a jester and stuff like that. So I found school challenging. I found the dynamic of the kind of factory line of school very challenging.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of creatives do find, and so I did find music was that perfect outlet for the type of person I was and the type of child I was, because, you know, I couldn't sit still unless I was doing music.
No,
I could sit still and play guitar for hours.
Now, this is interesting. I used to teach at, well, I still do actually, at Mepham School.
Okay, cool.
Now, Mepham is an interesting sort of place because it's a bit of I think think it's safe to say, sort of a hodgepodge of different types of characters that you get there. Obviously, there's some, quite expensive properties around there, but there was quite a large traveller community at one time.
Mm-hmm.
So you used to get quite a mix, and a lot of the kids that were there were quite. How can I put this? Not disruptive in sort of the way that you're saying. They were quite. Yeah. They didn't want to sit still.
Yeah, that was the word most used in my report.
Yeah, and we actually did at this particular time. I had a little band running at Mepham because my late wife was working there, and she was very sort of active in getting musical things going on. Mm-hmm. And there was a fantastic rapper. In fact, he became, I don't know what he works under now, but he was certainly working under the name of MC Lethal.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what his it's not
Lethal Bizzle, maybe. Lethal Bizzle.
Could
maybe.
Could be.
Maybe. He's a massive name.
But he was astonishing at the age of 12. He was on MTV really early on, but he could rap about anything. You could say, Matt, could you do a rap about a radiator? And he could just pull this stuff out of the air.
Proper wordsmith.
Unbelievable. Anyway, we had to do this sort of cultural thing between these different schools, and there was Pete Chapman, who's urban dub.
Mm-hmm.
So he's become really famous as a DJ and everything. So he was involved in this thing. There was Matt, and then there were these girls doing a dance routine and stuff. And we got this thing. So basically the idea was there was a guitar. I was playing a guitar riff over a drum, just a drum machine pattern, and Matt was rapping, and they were all dancing and stuff. So that was the idea. So we went and did this thing, and honestly, it was like you had the normal school things going on, and then you had them. It's just like another league.
Mm-hmm.
But what was fascinating was when they were doing some, I don't know what it was basically to do with, really. Somebody came in and gave them something that they had to write about. Anyway, they couldn't sit still. They'd chat and chat. And the other schools, they're not that far away, only Longfield and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
These kids were like sitting there like as if they had nothing to say. And I thought was fascinating that these kids had this dynamism in them, which you would have said they're just a pain in the arse because as a teacher you couldn't get them to sit down or stop chatting. But it's like there was something about them, and I think that's quite interesting. You saying that it was it wasn't anything malicious about it.
No.
But
none of my teachers disliked me, and that's the difference. It's like I've always been a friendly person and a kind person, but I definitely, would chat over people and wind people up inadvertently, and I get that. But it was just that. It was just, unless I just had a funny sort of thing of, I suppose, unless something was more interesting than what was going on in my own head, I find it very hard to concentrate on it, So it was, I remember thinking when I was young, like, having this strange thought that, okay, you can tell me not to do something, but you can't tell me what to think. So you don't know whether I'm thinking about whatever, what I mean? And I was a bit of a daydreamer, but, I don't know, I always had things to think about.
That's a very mature thing to think, isn't it? Really. Just actually shows you that really people's characters are there so much earlier.
Yeah, I do think that.
Than we ever sort of contemplate, I think.
Yeah.
So obviously by the time you're a young teenager, you're obviously pretty good at this point.
Thanks to you.
Well, it was easy really. I mean, some people it's just a case of pointing in the right direction, isn't it, I think?
Mm-hmm.
Before we started recording, we're saying about different people that we know because of the fact that, that I taught them or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and how completely different each of these musical people are
mm-hmm.
now,
mm-hmm.
doing totally different things. And, one of them's a great singer, and a good guitarist,
Mhm.
you know, and somebody else has got this great sort of technical ability, but they've got this different sort of angle about how they produce their music. You know, they're doing like rave songs, but on acoustic instruments. You know, just a completely different slant to things. And I think that's the point that I see in a lot of people, is that emergent musical spirit, if you like, and it's then allowing that to develop in its way. You know, obviously you need a toolkit, but obviously the toolkit is not the music.
No.
And, so you're at school, you're a young teenager, and you've obviously got a group of friends that you play along with, and that was quite interesting. Any thoughts about that? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it was one of those sort of chance things. I think where, you know, as you naturally do, I gravitated towards people that were exploring the same sort of things, you know, and I found some people at school in my year that became really, really good friends with, fast friends with, that, you know, where there was a drummer and a bass player, and then another guitarist, Max, who was someone I still to this day do lots of music with, and I've done lots of things in our careers together with, yeah, it was just another one of those things where I just think it was a timing thing, you know. We found this sort of little group of friends at, you know, year 7, sort of year 8, year 7, and there's a few other bands as well, and it was all healthy competition, you know. We were all quite different, all the different bands I was friends with and stuff, and we all egged each other on. But with our band, The Catch, we were called.
Oh,
we definitely, we had. There was a great sort of synergy between us as musicians, actually. Like, and there was a lot of similarities. Everyone was quite abstract in their approach as players. Like the drummer Henry was actually a piano player. And he was a great piano player, and he was more studied on the piano, you know. But when it came to drums, he had a much looser approach. He had a great teacher and stuff. But I think, much like me, Henry was quite ADHD, and, you know, so when it came to drums, where he just wanted to get all this energy out of him, his teacher really just taught him to play and be in an ensemble, and, you know, so it was a very similar approach. So I think that, you know, especially that dynamic with Henry as the drummer, because, you know, the old saying, you're only as good as your drummer. So it was a great thing, actually, where we shared that sort of thing. And then Mark as well, who's the bass player. He was another guy. He was a very, very smart person. All the lads were smart. We went to a good school, but he was a very, very kind of academic person as well, Mark. So again, he had a whole different approach. He's a scientist now. You know, I don't know if he still does music. I think he's a scientist within, like, audiology and stuff of the brain. So he did actually go down a tentatively musical route, you know, but within the science realm. So we started our band at the beginning of secondary school, and, you know, we had that band the whole way through secondary school until sixth form, and I moved on to music college and stayed together for a little bit, but inevitably we all moved on from that. But it was another really important part of the building blocks of my career, you know. Without that, again, it's, you know, everything would be completely different. So
absolutely.
It was a really, really important time, and a great time.
I thought what was interesting was when you won that competition.
The Battle of the Bands.
And you beat all these kids who were 6 years older than you. Whatever. That was interesting.
I mean, that was really good for us as well, because it was you know, it was voted for. There was basically 2 kind of prizes, and we won one of them. But for us being at the age we were, in a way, you know, it was the better prize for us, because we won the people's vote. There was also a judge's vote as well, which are involved in our vote as well. But it meant that the people who were going to all the shows, you know, and we didn't know everyone, but obviously you bring your friends and family. they got us through all the way to the final, and it was great. And we got a couple of days in a studio, and on top of that, we'd been gigging quite a lot, for a young band, and we'd been saving every penny we'd ever made, so already for a bunch of 14-year-olds, we had 800 quid in our little account of money we'd made just from our band. So instead of doing 2 days, we put all of that money in, and we made a little kind of an album basically, or what seemed like an album at the time, but it was a collection of our ideas, and it was just an amazing experience at that age to go in a little analog studio, flesh out songs, work with an engineer. It was all on tape as well. It was like a proper old school studio. So, and then actually I went on and did work experience there. So it was all of these things were really sort of.
Was that Graham's then?
No, it wasn't Graham's. It was a place called the Granary.
Oh God!
In Lamberhurst. Yeah. Guy.
Yeah.
It was a guy called Guy who was sort of affiliated with the Forum in Tunbridge Wells.
Yeah. Right.
And the label called Unlabel in Tunbridge Wells. So him and a guy called Jason. Jason owns the Forum in Tunbridge Wells. So yeah, they ran a label in Tunbridge Wells, and they ran the Battle of the Bands. So it was through that, and it was just again another sort of part of the tapestry of my story. All you can see it sort of weaving. Even just that chance. Us winning that competition, which then sent us to that studio, which is Sliding Doors. Which then I went on and did work experience at that studio, and that got me interested in this world, the studio world, as well as the playing world. So it's all a part of it.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier on about Freddy and your sort of Django Reinhardt, Stefan Grappelli thing, which was brilliant actually, and because this I think is an interesting aspect, because you went to Brit School.
Yeah.
And you made a lot of contacts there, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, because obviously I was sort of in contact with you still, to some extent, wasn't I? But I thought that was interesting, because there's a few little points which I'll pick, as you tell your story.
Yeah, well, I mean, so ironically, actually, because obviously, I grew up in Kent, in the countryside, and the Brit School's in Croydon, and it's, there's not a lot of publicity, or especially then, outside of the kind of M25, to really know about the Brit School. And the way I found out about it was actually on the first ever gig we did with the Catch. So the band formed essentially for Max, who was the rhythm guitarist's sister's 18th birthday party. As lots of bands form. So we put this band together for that, and then on the day of the gig, Mark, the bass player, got concussion in a rugby match, so he couldn't come. Oh. So Max's uncle is a professional musician, and actually quite a well-known one, so he was there, and he just said, "Oh, I'll play." And so he's a guy called Duncan Bridgman, and he has a project called One Giant Leap and things like that.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah. So that was so that's when I met Duncan and all the stuff. So there was a kid at the party who'd sort of seen our band play, and was really, really nice. He was an older kid, he was 18, and he went to the Brit School. And he was from Tunbridge, went to the Brit School, and told me all about it. And he's someone I cross paths with all the time now, because he's in the industry still, and so yeah, it was that's how I found out. And then the band carried on, and we said, we all wanted to go, and then inevitably it didn't happen. We went to a really good school, and everyone, the other lads decided to carry on academically. So I didn't actually apply for the Brit School when I was supposed to, because I was just a bit, fearful of going on my own. And then after trying to choose my A-levels, I just realised I just couldn't stay at that school anymore and do those A-levels. It just wasn't my path. So I just thought, I'm going to try my luck. Applied to the Brit School a couple of months late, considering I was so out of catchment as well. I was, lived so far away. Got an audition, went through the audition phase, and got in, which was, you know, the most amazing feeling, because it just felt like such a better environment for me, because it was this, you know, this college where, you know, I went to quite a great school, but quite draconian and quite strict and all these sorts of things. And suddenly I go and see this school which has just got all these amazing facilities and just all these creative kids being really expressive in the way they dress. It's all home clothes, and all these really cool teachers that, you know, it was all first names. You called your teachers by the first names, and it just seemed a lot more like a two-way respect thing, and very, you know, it just seemed like it was the greatest place for me to go. So that's where I went, and then I met people that basically changed my life. I mean, I met Adele there, obviously, and ironically we never once performed together at the Brit School, me and Adele. We never ever performed together. We were just really good friends. We were just really close friends, and we did separate things musically. She just did her own thing occasionally. You know, she would just, you know, she didn't have the greatest record of coming into school.
Oh, right, okay.
In the second year, that's for sure. But you know, she did her own thing. She wrote Hometown Glory there and Daydreamer, and she'd perform those songs at Brit School. My Same, and it was probably on top of you getting me to play gigs from such a young age, and throwing me in the deep end. I'll just play a song that, you know, getting me to play a song by ear on the spot, you know, and then I went to the Brit School.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was, and this was all what taught me to be a session player, you know, and it was like, and then I went to the Brit School, and you know, everyone there was used to being the best in their village, you know, and then suddenly you're put in an environment where you're all actually kind of more equal, and there's other people better than you, or at least in certain areas.
Here's a couple of interesting things you say now, because you reminded me of something. There was another aspect about your recording that you did with your band, because when you were getting ready to do that audition, I remember saying to you, the fact you've got your songs recorded could be a really important thing in the audition, because it was one of these sort of things that's sort of slightly off book. You know, it's not just you going in and playing. It's like, well, I've got these songs, and at that time that was quite unusual.
Yeah, no, that's
and the fact that you'd won a competition and the rest of it.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting element. That. Yeah,
no, you're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, one of those aspects.
Because I chopped one of the songs down from your recommendation and perform my own song. Yes.
So that was an interesting thing. So that's quite interesting that you were saying earlier on how those things all weave together. Now, so already at this point, because you're saying about this, obviously a lot of people that will be listening to this won't know the situation with Brit School, but after you went there, because I was impressed by what you did there and how you got so engaged with everything. There were three other people, I think, that I taught that went there, and for them to get in was so difficult. One of them was a keyboard player and guitarist, and because he was a keyboard player and guitarist and very creative and all the rest of it, he had quite a few irons in the fire.
Yeah, sure.
Then, so that was Simon Watson. So he got in, and he used to compose, and he could do something that would be a bit like Rachmaninoff met Chick Corea or something.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, it was that.
Yeah. Wow.
As well as being a really good guitar player. You know. Then there was Charlie Robinson, who was, your heavy metal guitar player. Great sort of. You want to slash guitar. Yeah. He was your man, right? And it was getting harder and harder at this point. And then at the end, there was one person that I thought would get in, and I don't think they did. Because it was then Catchman and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So you putting
more kids applying.
You being a guitar player going in late.
Yeah.
And getting in, you must have really impressed people, because okay, maybe it got a little bit harder, maybe, but I think there was always that pressure, because guitarists, there are a lot of them, unless you show something different.
Yeah.
And that's always been the aspect that I've sort of looked at and tried to foster in people right at the beginning, that you need to be really a really rounded musician who just happens to play guitar. You know? But as you say, I think for a lot of guitarists, your experience has been out there gigging, and we obviously did a lot of things very early on.
Yeah,
you come and play with a band.
When you were getting me to gigs since I was about 11 years old.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've done that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And again, that's the preset. That's the sort of idea behind Blues Camp, of getting people just play, and bring yourself to the party.
I think it's the most underlooked area. And it's like we were talking off mic earlier about, the best players in the world are always the ones you've never heard of, because they're in their bedroom all day and they don't perform. They find it hard to play with others because they're so used to just listening to themselves. And it's like but that's actually this is what a musician's being about. It's being part of that ensemble. And
absolutely. So in actual fact, it's not been technically the best. And of course, as I say to you now, one of the downsides of the internet is that all the people that used to be safely locked away in their bedroom playing, that never saw the light of day. In my day, you just knew of these people, but they never went out and did anything. Now, of course, they're on YouTube.
Yeah. It's kind of battle of the YouTube videos now.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that's the new precedent of kind of expertise. It's like
But what weirdly is that's not going to actually help music as such.
No.
From a technical point of view, okay, fine, but that's never going to help music. And again, we've often sort of spoken about this, fact that Hendrix wasn't the best technical player.
He was the most innovative.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point that we often forget.
Exactly.
We often sort of go down the
exactly
technical thing of so and so can do this and whatever. And it's not just guitar, is it? That's everything. Drums.
It's what imprint can you make? Just music is not about it's not the better is not by the faster it is and the more stuff that's in it. That's musicality. That's not what it means.
Yeah, absolutely.
Musicality is it transcends that. It's about the soul and the expression.
Well, it's like again,
motive.
That's one of those things that like we listen to pieces of music and it's like, well, what's being said? What does it speak? Is the song speaking to you, or is it just an intellectual thing going on? I've written these words about so and so. What does that mean? Is the emotional experience coming across in a piece of music? And I think that's often what gets confused. That
I agree.
People don't put that in. People just want to tell you something. So with the Freddy thing, because we picked up again with that. Because you had some really good response to what you were doing with the Django thing, because you had Michael Parkinson interested, didn't you?
Yeah, we were really lucky again. I mean, again there was a few great opportunities that the Brit School had. That again we were fortunate because just when I was at the school, some of these things were new, and we became the sort of first recipients of these awards. There was an award that got released in our, I think it was either the end of our first year of sixth form or beginning of the second year, but anyway it was I forget the guy's name unfortunately, but it was he was the producer for the Terry Wogan show,
right,
and he was a avid guitarist, big musician. Oh no, this is sorry. There was two awards. So yeah, this one he passed from cancer, so they set up a foundation and a guitar award, which I was the first recipient of.
Right.
Which was amazing. So that was a link with Terry Wogan. The Michael Parkinson one was the Accenture Award. So Accenture were some sort of company, I don't know what they did, but they had sponsored this award for the school, where it was just an award for, I think it was just for musicianship, really. It was just, you know, everyone auditioned individually because it was supposed to be for a solo artist or solo musician. And then ironically, they didn't, you know, me and Freddy auditioned individually, although we did play together, but they didn't know this, and they loved both of us so much they decided for the first year ever to give it to us joint and ask us to do something together, which was hilarious because we did do stuff together. So that was great. So we and Michael Parkinson was involved in that award. So he came to the school and did sort of a big sort of thing there, and then we were presented with the award at the MITS dinner, which is the Music Industry Trust dinner, which is linked to the Brit Awards, but for the industry. So it's kind of the secret Brit Awards that happens off telly, right, but for the music industry. But it's just there's one person that's honoured every year. So, you know, it's like the lifetime achievement thing. So he was being honoured that year. So we went up to a big sort of dinner and performed for everyone. And him and Sir David Munns, who at the time was the head of EMI, they presented us with the award, and so that was an amazing thing, because, you know, we were sort of 17-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids, and that was kind of the first big thing we did as Fred and Ben, you know. But we were really lucky, you know, throughout college, we were involved a lot in sort of extracurricular shows, and, you know, we went into the Houses of Parliament and played for people, and we did all sorts of things, which was really, really amazing, and just another really kind of important learning stage of my career, really.
Because you did a couple of London guitar shows, didn't you? One or two.
I think
we did sort of a talk about the guitar grades or something, like grade 8 or something.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that, which is that was
awesome. Yeah, I remember. I talked about that the other day, actually, because I just remembered it. All of these things were just so great for building my understanding and just sort of my own understanding of how to use this to express myself. Yeah. Because that ultimately is what it's about, really.
Yes.
Especially for me, because I'm one of those people that I'm quite introverted in many ways and insular. So music has been a huge sort of saving grace as I've grown up to help me kind of have a place and identity in the world, you know, and be able to confidently integrate people, because I have a tendency to be very shy, but music has been able to sort of transcend that for me, you know. As you probably remember, when I was young on stage, you know, sheepish with my head down, you know, that's sort of it's all been very, very great.
So that was because I remember you sent me some photographs of you and Michael Parkinson and stuff like that. It was pretty amazing. Now, here comes the interesting thing for me. We were interested in this, what you were doing with Freddy, and there was a little sort of management thing going on, wasn't there? We were trying to got some publicity pictures and stuff like that. And the idea was, because you were doing something old style that had like some sort of vintage aspect to it, because it was very sort of Django and you know, stuff, wasn't it? But of course you were young, so it was this sort of thing about being able to pitch that, you know, could we get this funded by like a whiskey company or something like that? That sounds pretty un-PC now, but you get the idea.
No, exactly.
Because it's the idea of getting something that was like something that had a bit of heritage, in other words, the style of jazz that you were doing, but you know, angling it in a new way because you were young. And we got that underway, and it was beginning to. We had some really good ideas, and then you phoned me up, and I thought this was really good, because this sort of sums it up for me with what you do. You phoned me up and you said, I've got a friend from Brit School, and she's an urban soul singer, and I really want to give this a shot. I remember that's exactly what you said. I want to give this a shot. So, would you mind if we could just put,
Freddy on hold.
Yeah, on the back burner. It's like, yeah, well, yeah, go for it. It's like not I think for me. And of course, that was Adele,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was so. The way that you were able to spot that, because obviously people go like, oh yeah, but it was Adele, but that wasn't the Adele.
No, exactly, yeah.
That wasn't the Adele. And what was interesting about this was I didn't know anything about this until obviously I started to see her MySpace slot and all these hits, these downloads. It was like 10,000 downloads of a song. It's like, and she wasn't even actually signed at this point. And it's like, crikey, what's this, right? So then, I think I told you the story. I knew you were doing stuff, but I didn't know what was going on, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd finished my teaching at the office in Adelaide, Saturday afternoon, get in the car, and I turned the radio on, and I listened to this guitar playing, and I thought, this sounds like me. This is totally bizarre. There was this sort of blues thing going on, and you had this sort of like little hammer-on blues lick that.
Yeah. Wonder where I learned that.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, this is totally bizarre. This sounds like me. It was on an acoustic guitar, and I thought, surely not. And it was Dermot O'Leary's program, and of course you were on there.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember the song.
Right. Yeah. And
Sam Cooke song. Yep. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that evening, I got a feeling that you were on Jonathan Ross's program. The same day, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And it was just you and Adele. It was. I think that was it. It was just.
I think on Jonathan Ross, there was a band.
There was a band, right? Okay.
On the radio,
it
was just the two of us.
Yeah. Right, So, but that was on the same day, and suddenly it was like, oh my god! It was lit.
Because that Jonathan Ross show was cancelled. It was like she got it because someone else cancelled, and they got her in. So it was another chance thing for her, and obviously all of us involved. But it was almost unheard of for an artist at such a virginal stage in their career to have done his show, because at that time it was the biggest chat show.
It was.
So it was kind of like that was a massive catalyst for her in the UK and Europe essentially, and I mean that just happened time and time again for her, really.
Yeah, I know. Well, that was literally. It seemed to be on one day. It just happened, and I've seen that before, and that is sort of, which I've said to you about these other interviews I've done with people, where you get those things that it's like, well, it was luck, or it was chance, but it's so common this, where it's like, literally out of the blue, something comes in, and okay, you've got to be in the right place, you've got to have the contacts. Yes, that's true. It's like, the harder I work, the luckier I get, type of thing.
Yeah.
But there is that sort of strange, synchronicity, if you like.
Yeah, I agree. I think, because it's like I don't disbelieve in luck. I do think it is more like you're saying, like the harder you work, the more lucky you become, in the sense of you make your own luck to an extent. But I think luck is more. It's when people are able to kind of navigate the omens.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? And act on their own instincts and have faith in that. And that's lucky. You're lucky if you're able to read between the lines and attach yourself to the right things.
I use that word because it's a good container term.
Yeah. For
all that stuff that we can't quite rationalise, that sort of is going along in the sort of soup of life somehow. There's a great. I might have said this before on an interview, but there was a thing with Napoleon. Somebody, talking to him about promoting people to marshal or whatever, and they were going on. There were all these aides are sort of saying, well, you know, there's this Chapman. And he turns around and he said, yeah, but is he lucky? You know, it's sort of like that type of thing. Well, there is that sort of thing of, you know, where does the opportunity fall?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and some people seem to have that happen more than others. Mm-hmm. And there has been some research into this, that some people just seem to be luckier than others.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often a character thing, that they're more gregarious maybe, you know, they talk openly to people, they're more open to the possibility of things happening.
Yeah.
To the people who are, for the, you know, unlucky, who don't.
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of being, on one hand, more open, and on the other hand, less agreeable. In the sense of, you know, do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, because
exactly what you mean.
It's like the Jordan Peterson sort of concept of agreeability.
Yes.
I genuinely see that, especially in the creative world.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think because it's, you know, it's, you have to be very open, but know when to say no or when to say yes, as in. And I've done lots of it in my life, you know, I say yes to lots of things, and knowing deep down that I didn't really want to do that thing, but I'll do it for that, but, you know, and that's inevitably a negative in the long run, because you're taking something away from yourself. It's not truthful. That if you knew that it wasn't right for you, you know, it's less offensive to say no.
Yeah.
For instance, you know, and know what to say yes to, or you know what to say no to. So, so for me, I just think with musical endeavours, it's just, I just attach myself to things that I think are great. I don't overthink it, where I try and think like, oh, that person's, you know, or try and think of the facts and figures. I just think, I think she's amazing, so I can add value to it. So then I'll stay as long as I know I can add value to it. And it's the same, you know, when I moved on and did other things. You know, that's the most important thing for me, because you can believe what you want. Maybe it's you're adding to the aspect of manifesting it, but you know, either way, if I have faith in something, then it doesn't matter at the end of the day what happens to it. I'm doing it for the sake of doing it. You know.
Yeah.
Because you meet so many people in this industry that it's a hard industry. You know, it's you have 90% setbacks. You know, no matter what level you're at, it's 90% no's, and you don't get that gig, or you don't get that pitch, or you know. So it's a really hard industry to stay motivated. But for me, what sets the sort of, you know, men from the boys is the motivation comes from the fact that I'm a musician no matter what, as you are. It's like, it doesn't matter if I'm earning money from it or not. I'm not going to stop picking the guitar up.
No.
Whereas so many people do. So many people try for a year or two, and that band doesn't do well, or this happens, and then they just go, oh, I can't do this anymore, and then they become an accountant and this. And I get it, of course I get it, because we all have to eat and survive. But if you're going to stop being a musician because you didn't make a career out of it, then you weren't really a musician. You know, it's like these things shouldn't matter. You know, and I think once you start just being a musician rather than thinking you're a musician, it's really important.
Yes, that's a very good point. Very good point. So how did you deal with, you know, this sort of meteoric rise? Because I mean, I couldn't quite get my head around it. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't understand it really, but I think, for me it's easier because I'm the supporting actor, you know, as it was. You know,
but
so
you were still there.
I'm still there, absolutely. But what I mean is, for me, it's hard for me to fully answer that question, because my experience is so much different to the artists I work for instance, you know, because it's not. Yeah, like it's still a sort of pinch me thing, but I could always have a little bit more kind of. Do you know what I mean? There's less pressure for me. It's like I can relax and I can kind of be a part of the journey.
Yeah,
but it's
because
still.
when you're walking out on stage, then you know you're part of the band, but you're not the.
No, it's exactly, and it's more. It's like I still, for instance, I still get way more nervous. The smaller the gig, the more nervous I get. without a doubt. If I'm playing to 100 people, my hands are shaking. If I'm, playing in a stadium, like, it's such a bizarre, different thing, because you're actually so detached from the audience. You don't really see anything.
You don't see.
You don't hear anything. You've got your in-ears in. You only have as much of the crowd as you ask to have in your ears. It's just kind of, it's a very surreal experience, and you're in your own little world. So but then the horses for courses as well. Like, that's the way I feel. Some people would be crippled in fear if they walk out on a huge stage, because it is also a very daunting thing, just looking out at a sea of people. But I don't know. I think for me, it's also just having those people around me. The fact that obviously the gig for me was, I was playing for a really good friend of mine I wasn't employed as a musician, who became friends with my boss. Do you know what I mean? We were friends first, and we went on the journey together. So that also made it more easier and more manageable, because kind of we had each other, and then the other people that were involved. There was a really great group of people, and she in particular has a great team, like a really great team of people around her that have helped this whole thing come to life as it is now. So there's a whole multitude of factors that have made it manageable, but even with that all said and done, I still don't believe half. It's mad, really. It's really mad.
Interesting.
It's just kind of happened.
Well, that's it. Don't stop and think about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then we get the next interesting twist to this. Adele, obviously, I think she stopped to have children, didn't she? Between the albums.
She stopped between the first and second record. She didn't have her son then. Between the first two albums, she stopped for a few years, and just kind of hibernated, tried to have as normal a life as she could, without anyone knowing what she was doing. And even including me, we didn't see each other much in between those records, because we'd spent such an intense period of time together, that we all just went off and lived our lives for a little bit, and then reconnected for that second record, which again I played on a couple of album tracks on that. But I, in between the first and second Adele record, I went off and actually started playing bass for a guy called King Charles.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I a whole different sort of thing. He was an artist that I'd become friends with through a studio I was affiliated in West London, near where I lived, called MI7, and I just basically sort of was just always. It was a studio right next to my house, and two of my flatmates worked there, and I was just kind of always there, hanging about, doing the odd session for them. I'd use the room sometimes, and this was just another really cool synergetic thing, because I was kind of off touring. I wasn't doing too much. I was just, like I said, doing drips and drabs in the studio and stuff like that. And this guy King Charles, he's called, had just gone on tour supporting Mumford & Sons. But this is again before Mumford & Sons were massive. This is their first headline tour, and he'd grown up with them. He was their best friend, and it was a 2-week tour, or maybe it was a 4-week tour, and a week or two in, his bass player left. And I'm not a bass player, but I can play a bit of bass, and it was a kind of rocky gig, all on pick and stuff, so I was like, I could do that, yeah, I'll do it. And one of my other flatmates was the drummer, so I just jumped in on the tour halfway through it, and we were touring with the Mumford Boys when they released the album. So again, it was just during their sort of rise from, we were playing sort of 500 capacity venues to 1,000 capacity venues, and I stayed on that gig on the Charles gig for a year or so, playing bass, backing vocals, and like auxiliary drums. It was like, completely
Oh, right.
out there. So I had a second auxiliary drum kit, and it was all, when I grew my hair long, and it was, it was all very sort of rock and roll and headbanging. It was great. It was so much fun, and real great deep riffs, and he's quite glam rock. He writes
Right.
really great sort of amazing lyricist. Like, he's a huge Bob Dylan fan and stuff. He's an amazing songwriter. So that was another whole new sort of thing that I did, and it was actually another really important part of my development, because I didn't actually get paid for that tour, because my deal was they just basically gave me a set of keys to the studio. So it was kind of like I lived literally a road away, so I could just go at 3 a.m. if I wanted and use the writing room, and so it was brilliant. Had this sort of brilliant sort of little family around there. And then the second record came out with Adele, so then we went back to that, and we had a good old run. But we didn't complete a lot of stuff back then, for numbers of reasons. Adele, that was the album where Adele got nodules on her throat, and it all ended prematurely, and she had to have some pretty hardcore operation on her throat, which literally meant she couldn't sing again for a long time. So it all came to a head quite abruptly, and we'd already cancelled a few tours and redone bits and bobs. So that whole album, even though it obviously was one of the biggest albums selling wise, from the touring side, it kind of hit us in waves, because we'd start a tour, we didn't manage to finish, and then we'd have to redo bits and bobs, and then it all just stopped. So it wasn't quite what everyone expected it to be on the touring side. And then we finished that record, and I took some time out, and I decided to mess around and try and do some individual projects of my own. I actually just put some songs up on the internet just as a songwriter, and they weren't songs I'd imagined myself singing. They were kind of piano songs, ballady. I'd kind of imagined to write for a female singer eventually, but anyway, I got interest through those songs as a solo artist. So I just thought, well, I might as well try it out, see what happens, So I did my own thing for a little bit, just under my name, Ben Thomas. Got an agent, and sort of started gigging some of these songs I'd written, and getting bits of interest and stuff. But I wasn't ultimately happy with it. I think it's funny, like, after playing in the session world for quite a while by this point, and playing for Adele, who'd gone from nothing to everything in a couple of years, and became the biggest star in the world. I did struggle with the notion of being a solo artist, for playing for someone like that at the highest caliber, and seeing exactly what the sacrifices are, and knowing myself, it made it really hard for me to really throw myself into that project, because I'm a different type of person, and ultimately I don't think it was the right route for me, actually, just being heart and sleeve Ben Thomas. It's just I'm more of an art-led sort of person.
Yeah.
I like conceptual records and things like that. So I did it for a while, and I'm still, the songs are great. I'm proud of the songs, but they as an artist, they didn't represent me. So it kind of fizzled out a little bit, and then I was panicking a bit, thinking like, I really need to sort of maybe get a new gig and sort of throw myself into something again. And it was almost as soon as I had the adamant thought in my head, I need to work again now, I suddenly got 3 things offered on the same week.
Really?
3 big things.
Right.
So I got a call through someone, and it was to maybe go off and play for Lana Del Rey.
All right.
So it was just through contact, but on the same day, Marcus Mumford broke his wrist, so they needed someone to play guitar for the rest of their tour while he sang. And because I knew them, and I knew their agent very well, because Lucy also does Adele, my name had been put forward from a few people, so I got a call from them. So I pushed off the Lana people for a while because I'd rather see the Mumford Boys because I knew them well and I toured with them and they, you know, they were mates. So I went and did a couple of rehearsals at Marcus's house, and but they were auditioning a couple of other people, and I knew that. And I was, you know, I have the philosophy of kind of it is what it is, and I don't, you know, I'm not going to cry over spilt milk sort of thing. So I just sort of, I was maybe a bit too quietly confident. I thought like, oh yeah, no, this should be great, you know, because we're mates, and I lived only a couple of roads away from him as well, so it was kind of perfect. And but one of their really really good friends, was also auditioning, and he'd just, you know, learnt all the songs, and he was the perfect guy for the job, absolutely. So what happened? So I got offered those two things in the same days, but because I'd not really, I'd been holding off the Lana thing to see what happened with Mumford, and then that fell through with Mumford. So then when we called back to Lana, they'd already sorted it out. So it was kind of like, it was another learning curve of, oh, you know, maybe I was a bit too complacent with this. But then, within 2 more days, I get an email from another friend who used to be a singer. He was just like, oh, I've just started managing this guy. I've just got into management and I found this guy. He's called Sam Smith. Like, we were like, and it was like no one knew him.
No, no.
He was like, can you come and do a show and just play one song? You know, he just wanted me to just come down. They'd done it. They were doing this beautiful little gig at St Pancras Old Church in St Pancras, and it's this gorgeous little church. And they'd done this. It was a showcase for Sam basically, and it was a string quartet piano player. But there's one song which was a guitar song, so they just wanted me to come down and play one song. So I listened to the demos and I was like, oh, this guy's really good, you know. Went down, did the show, and loved it. I thought it was brilliant, and loved Ruben, the piano player, as well. We you know, he's been there since the beginning with Sam, and he's just another amazing musician. So they were doing the same show exactly a week later. So then Elvin's like, oh, we'll get you to do a few more songs. So the next week, you know, I did like a night's rehearsal or something, and then, oh no, I didn't. I just had to learn the songs on my own, and then I did 3 or 4 songs the next week. And after that show, I just took Elvin to one side. I was like, you know, if you're getting a band together, please let me know. I'd love to be a part of it. And within a couple of weeks, we started rehearsing with Sam, and that was it. And then we went off, and it was another one of these things. I mean, he'd done the single with Disclosure before this point.
Yeah.
So he did have a kind of cult following, which is what set Sam up so well, because he did this amazing song with Disclosure, which was one of their biggest songs. So by the time he had an album ready, there was so many eyes on him that it was even faster than Adele in a sense, because as in it was even faster for him to start doing big shows, because within months we were doing LA Greek Theatre, you know, and stuff like that, which was just insane. You know, that was album 2 for Adele. You know, we did all those venues at album 1 for Sam. So yeah, it was just another sort of whirlwind gig, and a different setup. I mean, the band for Sam, it was a lot younger. You know, I was one of the oldest people in the band actually. So it had a very different sort of fire to it. You know, it was much fierier musically because there was a load of young 20-year-olds playing together. But it also meant it was, you know, more childish in other areas, a little bit more difficult, you know, in some areas. But it was just another amazing experience, amazing kind of just the right people for the time. I think that's always it, you know.
Yeah.
Things change over the years. I've been on seen people come and go on some gigs, and it's all about what's right at the time, and sometimes things stick and sometimes things don't. But it was another kind of just everything seemed to just line up in the right order, and I just sort of was lucky enough to kind of keep moving forward through it all. And
so when that sort of comes to an end, is that because Adele was back again?
Yeah, so with Sam, you know, unfortunately that was why I had to leave a couple of months before the end of that album, which it's one of those things in this industry which sometimes you can't help it, especially when you have there's other gigs that you're sort of a part of, and it was a bit gutting that I had to sort of cut it short, but I'd been there for a long old time, and it was I'm proud of like the sort of the attachment I had when I had it there, and but I had to go back to Adele because Adele was my buddy from school, and it's my gig for life really. It's kind of Sam was an amazing home for me, but Adele was always there first and would always be there, so I couldn't not go back to that. So I went back to that, and it was great. It was an amazing thing to go back on, and because it was a whole new experience this time around with this last album in every way, from the scale, from where she is now as a mum, as a person, as a leader. It was just a whole different experience this time. It was amazing, and it was, we finished the whole tour. We did 123 out of 125 shows, or 100. I think we only cancelled 2 shows in 18 months. And it was insane. Yeah. 4 shows a week. So it was quite civilized in that regard. It wasn't too many because it was all centered around the fact that she had Angelo, her son, and he was on tour a lot of the time. So it was well structured, and everything was stuck to it. It was very, very well planned and executed. The only thing was that just meant you were away for a long time, which is great in some regards, but obviously everyone's got family, so it has its pros and cons basically, like all things.
Yeah. So where are you now with everything?
Right. So now, God, I mean, I don't really know. I think I'm now in that typical creative stage of, I don't know. I'm sort of doing all sorts of things. So I've came off with Adele, and I've been focusing a bit more on the studio stuff as we're sitting here in my studio, and
it's a magnificent. It's a shame that we're not filming this actually, because it's astonishing studio. You've got enough room in there for an orchestra.
Yeah, it's a really great space.
It's an amazing.
It's a great space. So yeah, we've been just doing more stuff here, playing for various people, playing for a new artist called Brother Leo, who's sort of fresh coming out at the moment. He's a Swedish guy. He's got again writes really great songs, really good fun songs. So we've got all of that coming up, and just this thing, isn't it? When you're being creative, it seems chaotic, but it's. You're kind of wading through the chaos and ordering it as you go along, So
absolutely,
I'm lapping it up, really. I'm enjoying it.
No, and you're looking well as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Because as I say, that's one hell of a sort of regime that you've had to adopt over the last few years. With all I definitely wouldn't change it. I love it, and that's become my life and my lifestyle. But it's got its tricky elements. You've got to be. I think one bit of advice I would always say to people going into the touring world is because there's such a lack of routine because of just the time zone changes every few days and all this sort of stuff, and it's important to try and emphasise your own one to a degree. Go to the gym these mornings, eat at that time, or just silly things. Don't eat red meat for dinner before a gig, things like that. I just eat fish or veggie or vegan, whatever your tipple is. But it's important to just, for your own sanity, to sort of keep some sort of rhythm going, because it is chaotic if you allow it to be, and a lot of people do lose themselves in that chaos in this world, So I think that's an important thing to keep yourself in check, and So what would your advice be to a younger you?
To a younger me specifically would be I mean, mainly about belief, because, you know, ironically, considering my career, I was always someone that was quite, like we said before, like, you know, very shy, but also quite internally self-evasive, actually. Quite always telling myself everyone else is better. You know, always put everyone else on a pedestal above myself, you know. Maybe that's why I'm quite good at working for other people, you know, and adding value to other people, because I'm good in a machine like that. But I would say that, yeah, your faith in yourself is the most important thing. Stop competing with other people. You know, compete against yourself with other people, not against other people. You know,
that's a very good point.
No comparisons. Comparisons are just negative.
It's interesting because when you were saying this, you know, that obviously you did blues camp with us when you came down and working with Sam Kelly. One of the Sam's things is you know, about listening. You know, and as a drummer, you know, listening to the vocalist and all the rest of it. And of course, really, sort of like this sort of conversational aspect that music has that is often lost in the teaching. You know what I mean? But it's like having a conversation with people. And because if you think about that, in a normal sense of term, if you're talking to people, you would respect them. You would also consider what they know as being valuable. You wouldn't actually put yourself above them. You know, if you think about this, just talking to people. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a very good conversation, would you? If you weren't interested in what the other person had to say, and all you were waiting for was to say what you
speak. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And of course, music is definitely like that. And when you're working for other people, that's even more of an aspect, isn't it? That you are actually saying what's necessary for that person's message to be stronger.
Exactly, yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
So that's a very...
I think actually, yeah, no, you're totally right, and that just reminds me of on this last campaign with Adele. Actually, it was very, and not in a bad way at all, in a really good way. It was very, like, the whole thing about that tour was it had to be really authentic to the record. We didn't tart it up in any way.
Right.
There was no big segues, no massive changes to songs, nothing too elaborate musically. We've done lots of that over the years. And again, it's a timing thing. We look back at some of the performances from years ago, and we you know, it's a bit funny. Some of them, like, wow, we really took it to that place. You know, Chasing Pavements, like, with a huge gospel ending. You know, it's just But you know, at the time, it was what made sense to us. You know, and it was all positive. So, but this album was a show. You know, it was a like she broke some boundaries in the whole show that she put together, and she's very smart. You know, she's very.
Oh yes.
She's got an amazing vision, and she does not settle for almost.
No.
At all. It won't happen.
I picked that up from things that you said.
Yeah, it just wouldn't happen if it's not right. It'll get postponed. You know, and that's a testament to her success, really.
Absolutely.
Because that's why she's become so incredible at manifesting, you know, because if it's not what's in her head, it's not going to happen, you know. So it was, you know, we had to go in a much more anal way in the discipline of playing, because, you know, sometimes, you know, there's a couple of songs, you know, if I'm honest, where we've got two guitarists in the band. There's a couple of songs where it's very simple stuff. Yeah. What we're playing on one of the songs in particular, I play very simple kind of embellishments. It's much textured stuff, you know. So you have to get into a whole different mindset and subtlety of playing to be able to do that with passion and. You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly.
Put so much into it, because it's exactly what you're saying. Because you're not listening to yourself anymore when you start playing an ensemble properly. You're listening to the whole thing. You're a part of this whole thing. Like, you know, so then you can actually get into these very oversimplified parts, and then they're not simple anymore. You know, to you. You can go in the quantum level. You know, and the smallest things between us can mean the biggest thing, and you start to really understand. It's like there's that one beat in that one bar where the drummer can maybe change what he's doing just that one time, maybe add that open hi-hat where all of us go, ooh, you know, and it's just that to us, those subtle differences are what is required for that gig, you know, and it was just such a whole new way of like looking at it really, because, you know, you're usually given that a little bit more freedom as a musician, but it didn't feel like, you know, we weren't being stifled.
No.
It was a different thing, you know. So that was a really big lesson in learning how to listen, you know.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So what advice have you got for people who want to do the sort of thing that you've done?
I think again, fundamentally, going back to what I said earlier, is, you know, attach yourself to things you think are great first and foremost, and that you think you can add value to, because that is what it's about at the end of the day. You know, it's about building value and you know, sharing that value and adding value to things. That's, you know, it's part of the meaning of life for me, you know, is that it's kind of, that's evolution really, isn't it? It's that you're investing in yourself, which is you practicing your instrument or whatever it is you do, you know, and by investing in yourself you are building your value, your own value, and then you can use that to like attracts like. So you find people that, you know, you basically vibe with musically, socially as well. I think that's the other thing people forget is in the career sense of being a musician, it's really only about 50% at most is about your ability as a player, you know, as a technical player at most, you know.
Yeah, so I think you're right there.
I think I've never known someone to be fired from a gig or lose a gig that I've been anything to do with because of their musical ability, ever.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. It's always been because of attitude, things like that. If you complain too much, or you're just really a bit of a downer, you know, it's like it's a chemistry thing.
You know, it's like when you put bands together, that's the thing that you're always looking at is, does this team of people, you know, it's the sum of the parts, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The whole is much greater than all the little bits that go together.
Exactly, yeah.
And I mean, otherwise, you know, you can't. How can you explain the Beatles and the Rolling Stones? You know, because exactly. I mean, very rarely do you get somebody leave a band like that, and they become bigger than the band was that they were in.
Yeah.
It's really
very rare. Yeah.
Very, very rare.
I can think of one person, pretty much, Robbie Williams.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah, and I mean, he wasn't important in the
No. That was more just because he was so different to them. You know what I mean? And that, you know, but from a musician's point of view, actually, you don't really see that.
No, you very rarely see it, and yeah.
You see people leaving bands, but not in a being chucked. You know, in a kind of like everyone's moving on and doing different projects. You know, Rod Stewart and all these sort of people who go through different bands and stuff like that. But yeah, you don't really ever see people that leave and then go, I'm going to do something bigger than that.
Yeah. Even when you get somebody who seems to be the driving genius behind a band. Yeah. Even then, even John Lennon. I mean, you know, because you look at that and you go, well, yeah, okay, yeah, but he was amazing. And he was amazing then, and he was amazing.
But his narcissism drove him out of the band in the way he was driven, I think.
Possibly. I mean, I think that the thing is that there is something in that sort of chemistry thing that, again, it's like when we were talking about luck, you know, it's a container term thing, you know, the chemistry thing. There's that something that's going on with people that, you know, once that goes, it's not the same, you know, and you can do that by replacing one person in a band, and you can make a band by replacing one person in a band, you know. So it's fascinating. Yeah,
it really is.
Well, that was a fantastic talk, and you know, it's always great sitting down and chatting anyway. But I think there's so much there for people to sort of look at and listen to and take on board, because, again, as I've always said, always spoken together about this, that is one of the things that's sort of missing, because you can't really put those things down on a spreadsheet or on a, you know, a college course syllabus, about what we've got to do to become a successful musician, and often just
it's you see all these courses all the time. It's like I think it's like the key element that's missing. It's like there's infinite courses to teach you how to play an instrument. Then there's even people that go and monetizing in a more capitalistic way. But the bit in the middle is blending the sort of more capitalistic ideas and the emotive ideas of, like we're saying, it's there has to be a more like, not spiritual, but like more emotional investment in these things, because that's what it is. It's an extension of you.
Whatever it is.
But music is an emotive, expressive thing. So if you're not in tune with the expressive nature of it, i.e., like I'm saying, attaching yourself to things that you have synergy musically with, not just, that's got legs on it from a business sense, or totally. That guy's the best bass player and I think I'm the best guitarist, so let's do something together.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, exactly. So it's you've got to read between the lines. I think is important.
Great. Well, all the best for your future projects.
Thanks, mate.
I'm sure there'll be some, other amazing things to come.
I hope so. Yes.
Yes, I'm sure there will be, because I think that's, as I say, that's the thing that seems to stick out with you, that you seem to make good choices, whatever that is. Yeah. Well, thanks ever so much, and
thanks, mate.
Yeah, that's good. It's been great.
Perfect.